Let's continue on our critique of Something from Nothing, Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins. I'm sorry this series of videos is so long, but since they did so many mistakes, uh, I was left with a lot of work. So let's see what they have to say more about. They will not call God a divine Kim Il-sung.
Exactly right. And not only does God have to be a master physicist, he's got to be in telepathic communication with everybody praying to him. He's got to know all our sins. He's got to forgive us if he feels like it. He's got to cure people of cancer if he's asked to. I mean, all those sorts of things which are simply adding to the problem. So I think the Weinberg quote that you gave is just too weak. I think we can say positively.
Well, I think at the same time, and I think one has to be careful. But even here, and I should say that our views have come together a lot more. If you listened to us 5 years ago, we were more divergent, I think. And I like to think I convinced you, but no. But that it's worked both ways. I can definitely attest. But one can say, I think it's important to say that we cannot, and I try and say in the book that I can't prove that there's no intelligence governing the universe at some vague level, in a deistic level, or even a theistic level, where you say, well, maybe there is some intelligence that caused it all to happen.
You can't prove that other types of intelligence, not even deistic, but the Christianity or Islam or whatever, are false either.
I can't prove that. What I can say is there's absolutely no evidence of that. That I can say as a scientist.
No, you can't, because, like I said, there is evidence, and I will make videos on that.
But I can't really say that I can prove, therefore, by lack of evidence. You can't prove it in the negative. But that isn't. But nevertheless.
Actually, that's false. You can prove that lots of things don't exist, and Professor Krauss did degree in mathematics, so I think that he knows that in mathematics you can prove that lots of things don't exist. For example, in set theory, you can prove that in the Zermelo-Fraenkel choice system, there is no set of all sets. For example, even in Zermelo-Fraenkel, you can prove that. You don't need choice for that at all. More things. If you prove that the concept of God is logically incoherent, you prove that it doesn't exist. If you prove that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you prove that God doesn't exist. So you can prove that God does not exist. Of course, by showing that there's no evidence for God, you cannot prove that it doesn't exist. That's true. But if you can give a good argument to say that, to show that if God exists, then you should expect much more evidence, and then you prove that if you have less evidence than that one that you should expect, then that would be an argument against the existence of God from the absence of evidence.
That's not the same as saying, people say, well, therefore God can't disprove the existence of God. But that kind of God has nothing to do with the God of Judaism or Christianity or Islam. It's a personal God, has nothing to do with that. It's a giant leap of illogic to go from that kind of God to a God that cares about us. And so I'm always amazed that people, even in the case...
I don't understand what's the difference between, if there is a God, and it's not a, if it's not Christianity or Islam or etc., it's not a personal God, then what kind of God is it? I don't think that makes any sense to say that there is a God but it's not personal. Some people like to call God to physics or to nature. For me, that's just this atheism in disguise. If there is a God, then it's personal. If there is no personal God, then there is no God, and that's the end of the story.
So cosmology saying, well, there's room for God at the beginning of the universe, somehow say that must mean
that Jesus Christ died for our sins. I mean,
yeah, it just, there's no logical connection between those two. And
no, but I mean, I've been caught out with this before. I said something similar to what you said, and I said, well, of course, maybe there could be a deistic God, but that's very, very different from the God of the Christians or the Jews. And I've been pounced on later. Dawkins believes in a deistic God. And that's really happened to me. And so I want to reiterate what I said about the Weinberg quote. Not only can, I mean, you cannot, of course, disprove a deistic God any more than you could disprove leprechauns and
Again, the nonsensical parallels.
but you can say something much stronger than that, which is that even a deistic God would still have to be exactly the kind of thing that we spent our lives explaining and have gone a long way towards succeeding. Intelligence, whether it's godlike or anything else, intelligence comes late in the universe. Intelligence comes at the end of a long process of evolution.
Unless we're the end.
No, I didn't mean the end. Intelligence comes after a long period of development of evolution, starting from literally nothing, as we've now learned.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
Then
From literally
chemistry
nothing.
takes over, biology takes over, and so there may be in the universe godlike beings. There probably are life forms which are so much more advanced than us that if we were to meet them, we would fall to our knees and worship them.
I would not
But
worship
they would
anyone
still be the
except
product
God.
of a process, explicable process of evolutionary development. They would not be gods in the sense of having created the laws of physics or created the universe or created life or something of that sort.
Okay, and I think that's true. And there's another stronger thing I think one could say. When people ask me if I'm an atheist, as a scientist, you're not certain of anything. There are things that are probable and things that are improbable. And what you can do is I can say, looking at the universe, that I can't say that there's no God, but I can say the universe looks just like a universe that would be created without one. And moreover, that just like I can't say...
No, it doesn't. If there was no God, then there would be no universe at all. Because God is the source of all contingent reality. And there are miracles have happened in our universe, and that certainly doesn't happen if there is no God.
Using Bertrand Russell's famous analogy of a China teapot, I can't prove that there's no teapot orbiting Jupiter.
Well, somewhere they said that God was like a divine Kim Il-sung. I didn't find where there was exactly, but it was somewhere there. I would like to say something about that. Actually, one of the problems I recognize in Christianity is this idea, in Christianity and other faiths, is the idea of hell and of eternal consequences for the things that we do. And but actually, that's not a completely established doctrine in the sense that we don't know the nature of hell. Is it a literal fire? Is it not? We don't know if people are really, if they really stay there forever or they are destroyed, and we don't know if hell is eternal or not. Although most people would say that the universalists are not orthodox. Well, some people would say that, but I actually have a video on universalism if you want to see it. But I don't go very deep into it. And then but this is actually a very important theological discussion, and certainly God is not the divine Kim Il-sung, because we can actually find some reasons in studying theology and the Bible why God could have created hell. Now that's a very large topic, and I'm not gonna go into it now, but actually maybe I'll do some videos on that, and then you can check if you're curious about it, or even if you want, you can drop a message on my channel and I can talk about that. I just found the Kim Jong-sul thing.
I'm an anti-theist.
Kim Il-sung.
Namely, I can't prove that there's no God. I just wouldn't want to live in a universe with one. And that's my... I'm upfront about that bias. I wouldn't want to live with Saddam Hussein in the sky.
That's right. I mean, Christopher Hitchens' reason for that was a sort of political one, that living in a universe with a God would be like living with a divine Kim Il-sung. I mean,
and you see, like there's the Kim Il-sung thing.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't put you in jail for a year, but for eternity, for doing the silliest things.
So his was
one thing. It's not for doing the silliest things. Because when you think about sin and what it means to rebel against an infinitely holy being, that's not really a silly thing. The question is not God's justice, it's God's love when it comes to hell. But again, we're not going to get into that now.
Was a moral reason, which I respect, but mine would be a scientific reason. I wouldn't wish to. I mean, if there were a God which undermined the whole scientific enterprise, then science would be pointless. There would be no point doing science if there's a sort of magician um, um, deciding what's going to happen and changing the laws of physics at will or inventing them in the first place. So that's a different reason for not wanting to live in a universe. And I'm glad to say there's no evidence.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's saying that if there is no God, then there is no point of doing science. I would like to know if someone proved to Dawkins that there is a God today, he would consider pointless all of his scientific work up to now. Then he does a strawman argument because he depicts God as a magician changing constantly the laws of physics. Well, if that were true, then if God exists, then we know that it doesn't change the laws of physics constantly. So that means that there is a possible world, namely our world, in which there is a God, right? Okay, so I'm saying that if suppose that I'm saying that epistemologically, we all we know it's possible that there is a God. Even Dawkins believes in that. So I'm saying is that if he exists in our world, then he exists in a world in which it doesn't look like he's changing the laws of physics completely, and in which science as a point is not pointless, because Dawkins lives in our world and he doesn't believe that science is pointless. So Dawkins' claim that if God exists and science is pointless is false, because of this that I said, because I just gave you an example in which God exists, in which science is not, the scientific study is not pointless. And he does the straw man because he talks about God like a magician changing constantly the laws of physics, and that's not the point at all. God just intervenes in the world in some specific important events, and of course he does it sometimes to show his existence. And Dawkins, notice the inconsistency. Dawkins complains that God doesn't reveal himself enough, and you would need a very drastic revelation to believe, a very some sort of violation of the laws of nature. But then he complains that if God changes the laws of physics, then he doesn't want that God, because it doesn't make sense to do science. Now that they're going to get into a very interesting point.
But I don't think we've offended enough people. So let's go a little further, because I know we've had this discussion, and let's talk about religion and politics. Because in this,
you don't even imagine the amounts of nonsense that they're gonna say.
Because you said something to me which I think is going to shock a lot of people here, and I think it's worth discussing. We both agreed that the astronomer shouldn't be teaching astronomy when they have personal beliefs which are idiotic.
And I already explained that doesn't make any sense at all.
And the doctor shouldn't be a doctor when they have personal beliefs that are idiotic. Now I've known basically. You have argued to me, and I think we should have that discussion about whether that applies to politicians and particularly some of the politicians that are running for president now.
So I find myself in a difficult position because
what is
I'm
going
kind
to
of
say?
aware in America, and I'm not American, as you can tell, that the separation of church and state is deeply ingrained in the American polity, and rightly so. And John Kennedy, when challenged on his Catholicism, rightly said this is a separate matter, and as long as I don't bring my Catholicism into policy, you've nothing to complain about. And
that seems nice. Now, in the next part, now there's not enough time in this one. In the next part, you will see what they're going to say and how they're going to argue for discrimination based on people's religious beliefs.